Thank you all for joining us here. Craft in India can be described in a million ways. It's a form of creative expression, it's utilitarian, it's an inherited tradition and common property knowledge, it's a livelihood, a skill, an industry, and a communal activity. The global market for artisan-made commodities is valued to be roughly $1 trillion. The sector is the second largest employer in India after agriculture, and it involves the participation of more than 200 people, approximately 50% of whom are women. According to Jonathan Kennedy, who was till recently heading arts at the British Council, and was documenting India's crafts tradition in 2020, there are over 3,000 craft traditions that are spread across the country, some of them dating back to 2500 BC. And despite this humongous potential of Indian handicrafts, there's still something lacking. Be it greater acknowledgement of the efforts put in by artisans as creative auteurs, as well as entrepreneurs, the monetary value of the handmade commodity, or adequate institutional support for this evolving sector, especially now that the world is globalized and a lot more digital. In collaborative work, are artisans seen as equal creative partners? What are some of the challenges by the sector, and how can institutions play a role in mediating them? How can we harness the power of the NGOs, design houses, emerging businesses from within the country when it comes to supporting the craft? I think we're surrounded by an incredible example of how a collaboration between art, fashion, and craft can enrich and expand each of these disciplines and create something entirely new. How an atelier may expand its scope of work and responsibility to start a school of craft that skills women who are otherwise excluded from embroidery traditions, increasing their avenues of financial independence. I am, of course, talking about the Chanakya School of Craft and the Atelier and Karishma. I also feel like this conversation feels particularly urgent as we battle a global climate emergency, wide-scale unemployment, and the extinction of many indigenous handmade traditions. And with that, I think we couldn't have asked for a better panelist group to discuss this with, each of whom have been pathbreakers in their own respective fields. If you'll allow me, I'll just briefly introduce the work that they do. Jesmina Zeliang, who's the founder of Heirloom Naga, has started this with a mission to bring Naga textiles and other crafts to the forefront. Being acutely attuned to the trends and market intelligence, her work is also complemented by her efforts in upskilling, partnering, and working closely with artisans from Nagaland and the neighboring region in the Northeast. Recognized for her attempts to use traditional practices and contemporize them for current times, she has won multiple accolades and awards, including the JSW Prize for Contemporary Craftsmanship. Sudheer Rajbhar is the founder of contemporary design boutique Chamar Studio, which melds business with sustainability and Dalit pride. Working closely with artisans who are experts in the leather craft, Sudheer's is a mission to take artisanal know-how and traditional skills to build a world-class atelier for luxury leather craft originating from India. A staunch believer in the model of social justice, Sudheer also founded the Chamar Foundation that supports artisans to upskill and grow in their fields of knowledge. Vishpala Hundekari. Vishpala's advent into the crafts came via her expertise in architecture and furniture design. Her exposure to the crafts from a young age helped her in setting up Eki Beki, a hybrid social enterprise that aims to preserve, rejuvenate, and grow our craft heritage, creating livelihoods for artisans. As Inakshi mentioned, she's also the co-creator of Creative Dignity, a nationwide movement that started during COVID-19 pandemic, and which is how I believe Jesmina and Vishpala met each other for the first time. And with that, I'll dive into questions. If you'll allow me, I'll begin with some questions, and then we'll move to the audience to ask them. Jesmina, I would like to begin with you. If I'm right, Heirloom Naga was the last of the many attempts you made as a small entrepreneur. How has this journey of the last 30 years been?
But before I answer your question, I want to take this opportunity to thank the Asia Society for recognizing the work that I do and also giving us such a elevated platform. And in the same thread, I would also like to acknowledge the role that Karishma has also played in Heirloom Naga. I have known her much during the COVID, and I think we still have a long way to go in that partnership. So I've said this before, and I will say it again. You know, unless there is inclusivity and visibility of smaller groups, voices, marginalized, minorities, or indigenous communities, that defines the culture and people of India, only then we can lend credence to the diversity that defines our country. And today, as I speak to you, I'm sure that a platform like this would provide a lot of encouragement to many other stakeholders, particularly from my region, because they understand that initiatives such as this is being provided to them, perhaps in a new avatar. So thank you for that. Your question, okay, coming to your question, well, I've been around for almost 3 decades now, and as I speak to you, I feel a great sense of encouragement today that the craft sector is finally getting its due. And in that sense, I think a lot of stakeholders have a large role to play, and particularly for lesser known crafts. I work largely with women in the handloom sector, and it wasn't very easy for me to be where I am today, because in those days when I started off, people were not very aware of our craft. Although it was appreciated, it really didn't relate much to an audience outside the state. And factually speaking, my moment of reckoning came when I saw my small curated line in the window display of a very plush store. In those days, it was called the Santushti Complex. And that was my moment of reckoning, and it gave me a deep sense of confidence and recognition, and I felt that it was my responsibility to carry on this craft and to spotlight and showcase the incredible craftsmanship of our women. And with that, I also started working with male artisans, largely with crafts. And today, I'm very proud to tell you that we work directly with more than 450 home-based women and over 300 plus men in the crafts sector. So it's been quite a journey. Thank you.
Sudheer, I believe you started Chamar Studio while you were assisting an artist, and you come from the background of the arts. So how was that journey? And what was the final thing that made you want to start this? And what is the mission of Chamar Studio?
First of all, I really thankful to the Asia Society, entire team. Working? Yeah. So, I think Radha invited us to explain about the Chamar Studio, how I started. The Chamar Studio, I started through my art practice. I passed out from art school, and then I have a question what to do. Then I started assisting to the artist, and then I started working with the assistants. And after 2015, after this beef ban happened, so I started my Chamar Studio in Dharavi, like nomadic studio, where all the artisans are working with the leather, and they are suffering after the short of leather because of the cow nafa leather. It's really difficult to get them. So I bring the alternative medium for them. It's kind of playground, and we started working as experimenting with the new material. So the Chama Studio started with the new medium. It's a recycled rubber, because the Chamar, they are known as a leather worker. They always play with the leather. So when we introduced them a new medium, rubber, they got surprised like how they can work. So this is like really interesting medium for them now. They are really enjoying this material as a sustainable material, and they don't know before what is the sustainability. And now they know what is the contemporary design, what is the sustainability. This is how the Chama Studio has started.
Thanks. Vishpala, how does a furniture designer and architect move away in such a big way and then scale up and decide to stay in the craft space?
Hello. Thank you, Inakshi, for having me here, and I'm very happy to share the story. I've done furniture designing from NID, and as part of the course, we had something as craft documentation, where we were supposed to stay in a village with artisans for 6-7 days and document the whole craft process. So that time it was just because it was a course I was supposed to take, went to a village where I had to travel first by train, then a bus, then a bullock cart, and last, I think, half a kilometer on foot. That is how we reached there, to a shock where evening when I asked where is the washroom, I was told go anywhere outside. And this was almost 30 years back now. So my first contact with craft wasn't very pleasant. But when I came back after 6-7 days, that was something which stayed with me. Then over the years, I started practicing interior designing in Bombay. So of course I was doing all the houses in South Bombay, and some element of craft I would use, which was always loved by my clients. The artisans were very happy to make that for me. But later on I realized the artisans never got a repeat order. And the clients also never gave the contact to anybody else. I was hoping that this would grow organically. Then almost some 6 years back, I wanted to do something little meaningful. Once you hit 40, you have these thoughts that something you have to do. So that was the time I decided that to use whatever I have done so far in a little productive way. And that is how 6 years back Eki Beki was formed, born, where the whole idea was to bridge the gap between the urban clientele and the artisans. There is a big value chain gap, and which I have figured out over the years, because as a designer, I know the crafts which are available with the artisans you cannot use in your today's homes. So there has to be some change. Many crafts are dying. The crafts are dying because they have not managed to move on with times. Now, because the artisans don't manage to move on with the times, what happens is the craft look very dated. People don't use it. And it becomes a vicious cycle where they are not earning because of craft. So they move to bigger towns and give up the craft. And that is how this whole vicious cycle is born. And to break this vicious cycle, Eki Beki created a model where through awareness, skill development, design development, and market linkages, how we can bring the artisans to forefront, how they can earn a sustainable living through the crafts, and maybe reverse migration can happen and they can go back and practice in their localities.
I think, Jesmina, one of the things that I read maybe in a past interview, which I found remarkable, was that I think the handlooms that the women work with are small in size. So it's often women are weaving in kitchens, they're weaving on tables, they're weaving with other members, often doing housework, etc. So there is a certain, I think, I would be interested to know that in your job as the annotator or the translator from what is the cultural aspect of a craft heritage to the industrial, the financial aspect of it, what have been some of the biggest challenges for you? And if there's any particular experience that you would like to talk about?
First of all, I think we all need to understand one fundamental fact about craft, that craft is centered around the home, the heart, because you mentioned that, yes, we have a lot of women still weaving around the fireplaces. So it's the heart and the home and the heart, this heart, because we are not just talking about any product which you can just go and buy. It's not a commodity. It's something that has been crafted with a lot of blood, sweat, tears, and there's a soul to the product. So people need to understand that craft is really about the home, heart, and heart. Having said that, I think for me, being a stakeholder in this sector for quite some time now, I think most of you are already aware of the gaps and challenges, and which has been like spewing back and forth. But for me, the biggest challenge today, at least in the B2B business sector, which is where most of the business transactions happen, is the pricing index that we have all been thrust at. This is like completely stifling the sector. Creativity and innovation, which are the only two human capacities that money cannot buy, has been put in the back burner. We have to constantly work backwards. We have to constantly think that if this bottle of water is 5 rupees that I'm going to sell it, it's going to sell at 25 rupees. That kills us, And, so therefore I feel that this challenge that all of us in the craft sector is facing is slowly going to kill the enthusiasm of new startups, of the younger generation who simply do not want to look at crafts. So in essence, a lot of people from the craft sector are moving away to much more lucrative sectors. At least in the region that I come from, you will obviously see that a lot of young boys and girls in so many other service sectors. It's just the fact that they come back because of the emotional attachments to their homes. And therefore, I think that in the work that we do, we have a lot of responsibility and capacity to increase our footprints if at the end of the spectrum, the buyer also has an understanding and open mind instead of constantly wanting only to churn numbers. Many a time, it may not be music to many people's ears. Many a time I feel that, we are paying the electricity bills or, the interior decor of a large store. And an entry-level merchandiser at any given design house would be earning much more than an entire artisan and his whole family for the whole year. It's not fair. So I think the biggest challenge, and how do we, I don't have the answer for it basically, but I think much more empathetic partnership is required between the maker, the stakeholder like me, the private sector, the government, and of course the big business houses who can definitely bring about a lot of change.
I think I'll go to Vishpala right after this. So I think, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say that in some ways the model that Eki Beki works with is slightly more shifted because it works at a larger scale, right? And the time is different. So if I was to ask you the same question, for you then, what are the struggles in working in this space? And also, is there ever like a stress or a tension between production at a particular scale versus how do you retain the craft or the cultural source from which this work is coming?
So I would say this is a chicken and egg situation. You don't know which one to address first. So Jesmina, as she said rightly, that at the end of the day, the artisans are in this so that they can earn a living out of it, not the minimum wage. Okay, we are not looking at minimum wages, so that MNREGA and all is not for artisans. It's a creative sector, so you have to go beyond that. So one is at policy level, this shift needs to be made where artisans are looked upon. Like we have approached government a couple of times, and the answer we got is there are multiple MNREGA projects available. You can give it to your artisans. Now, somebody who is very, very skillful, you cannot ask them to go in for that. So that is at a policy level, this is a huge difference. Now at scale when you're working, there is you have to also understand the mindset of artisans. You cannot have one standard which will fit all. If you look at the artisans, because now we started only with Maharashtra, but now we are present in many states. The artisans in Gujarat and Rajasthan, they have the spirit where they want to become the entrepreneurs. You ask the same question to an artisan in Maharashtra, he or she is very happy to just make what you ask them to do and deliver it to you. They don't want to go to bazaars, set up their stalls, sell it to people, talk to multiple people. They just don't like it. So, as a you need to figure it out how the value chain works in each and every place. What are the gaps? Where are the gaps? And then just try filling those and not have a standard size fit all. So that is, you have to step back and see that. I hope I have answered your question.
Sudheer, I wanted to ask you, I think what I was wondering about was that often we don't think of the work of leather work, or I think you work with cobblers. How does one think of that as a craft practice? And therefore in your studio, how do you go about figuring out these new techniques, especially because they're working with a new material when they've historically only worked with leather? And so what is the design process like?
See this craftsmanship in India, Chamar, you can see like this Chamar word is a slur. There is no certain respect about the cobblers or leather workers. So what I decided, okay, let's make this name as a brand to explain the idea and what is their skill and what they want to do. So this is how we explain like what the design can be changed. So here in India, like people, they wanted to buy the luxury bag from Europe, but they are not appreciating in India like Chamar craftsmanship, and which is like really traditional way they are doing. I think there is the missing of this contemporary design. That's why they are not appreciated, or might be it can be like class or caste issue. So
I think just building on that question, I was also thinking, I think it's really amazing. I noticed that in your practice, you have a very clear articulation of what you do as Chamar Studio, what you do as foundation, and what you do as a teacher, since you teach at the leather school. So how have you kind of articulated these very distinct positions and yeah, why not all of them in under one aegis?
see, in general, this school is like, it's mainly focused on the education and research. And the foundation is core to dedicate with the community and the artisans and practice. But the Chamar Studio, it's a studio where I can practice with the artisans. And the foundation, it's more to support the craft and artist and designer and art and fashion. So it's a more about core to the, focused on community. And institution is just to focus on the education. It's a like really strict way you have to focus on the education and research.
Just building on that, Vishpala, I think very similarly for you, you have Eki Beki, the foundation, Eki Beki, the business, and then creative dignity. Why all three separate and not together?
So I'll start with Eki Beki. My intention was never to have these two separate entities. I started with the NGO. The whole idea was to help artisans with design development, market linkages, and that is where skill building and Eki Beki moves out of it. After 1 year, because of certain government regulations and CSR initiatives, we realized that as an NGO, we cannot sell anything. Now, if you are in livelihood, unless the artisan makes the money at the end of the day, it has no meaning. There's no meaning in creating multiple, design multiple products, but nobody is buying it. So you need to have that very, very commercial business sense to make it run like a business where the profits reach the artisans. And that is something the NGO cannot do, whatever are the current rules. They are changing, government is looking into it. But when I started it 5 years back, that was not there. So at the end of 1 year, we had no choice but to start the private limited company, which does buying and selling. And it is like a regular business where you make things and you sell things and try to look for B2B orders, B2C orders. We have tried analyzing whichever way the business works. So these are the two separate things. And anybody in livelihood today would agree that if you want to work at scale, if you want to work on bigger projects, you need to have both. Even when government projects like Spurti or CSR projects are there, government's whole initiative is about skilling the artisans. The skilling happens for 2 to 4 weeks, and they expect the artisans to earn through that training. It's not practically possible. For that, you have to have the end-to-end plan where you first train them. There has to be design intervention. The design intervention needs a market research. You have to do all these things and then figure out how and where you can sell it. So these things come together. Now coming to creative dignity is, it's a network of people, of all the people who are in craft sector. So it is not an organization, but it is just a network, and tomorrow it will be 3 full years. 20th April 2020 is when the first WhatsApp message started. So I can see Aradhana. Aradhana is also integral part of that. Jesmina is, oh, okay. Our advisory board member is here. So a lot of creative dignity people I can see here. But it's just a network of people where people working, some are just interested in craft, some are working with artisans, some are organizations, some are designers. Everyone was working in silos. And during COVID time, we realized that if we come together, if we collaborate, the impact will be much, much bigger. So that is how the whole creative dignity network started, and it has grown over the 3 years. We had not planned to create an organization out of it, but now we are connected to over 500 organizations, and it's a huge network. Anybody needs anything in crafts, you just put a message there and people just come and help you. So that is a different.
Thank you. I think when I'd asked Jesmina similar questions, that you've not gone this route, she had very squarely said that my biggest impact is through bringing financial independence and sustainability. And I think it was a point well heard, because that is, of course, at the center of all sustainable practices. So Jesmina, to you, my question would be that you've actually, like in your last 3 decades, gone from forming the first clusters in Nagaland for craft to working with large lifestyle houses within India, and then finally working with large brands from outside India. How is the difference in working between these two places, keeping the business in mind, and what are some of the compliance-based issues that you think could be perhaps better suited to?
You know, lately there is a lot of noise about sustainability. It's almost become very fashionable to talk about sustainability without actually knowing what it entails. So for me, like right from day one, my biggest concern was to sustain my business. I was constantly, you know, like a sales girl with a bag full of samples, coming to Mumbai, going to Delhi, and cultivating good customers, basically. In fact, my biggest break came from this city. Yeah. And yeah, so, you know, people talk about sustainability now, but for us, for me, it was a necessity even then and even now. So, you know, the landscape is changing with many more businesses, like, you know, mouthing the same thing, sustainability, and wanting to seemingly promote this sector. I think there is a tendency to corporatize the crafts sector, which is what is very upsetting. Secondly, there is a tendency to commodify crafts. And I think in doing so, you are simply and slowly killing the craft enthusiast and the craft sector. In my experience, like, it's always been to sell, basically, like I said, I was always a sales girl, to sell my goods to the right customers. And I've keenly followed market intelligence for that. Here, I would also like to mention that, being associated with some of the right councils and the right partners also helps. In my case, I became a member of the Export Promotion Council for Handicrafts, which is the apex body of exporters in India. And through the B2B fairs, we generate all our working orders. And in doing so, we have been able to sustain the livelihood of so many artisans who work with us. And the second thing that I've keenly followed is to increase my footprint in this sector. I realized that we have to have separate lines. You know, we just cannot say that craft is luxury and we will target only the luxury bracket. No, I don't agree to that. Then what happens to the semi-skilled and the new entrants? So we need to have a mass movement by design students and the design fraternity to provide the crafts, the artisanal community, simple design solutions, designs which are production friendly. Only then you can truly impact a lot of livelihood. We keep saying that we are the largest non-farm sector. So this is what is greatly critical need today. And then, of course, you can define crafts as crafts which are usable or relatable, or crafts that is collectible. And of course, the luxury segment will always be there. But in my opinion, there is a critical need to engage many more people through design thinking and a design-led movement in the country.
So I actually have similar question for both Jesmina and Vishpala, after which I'll come to you, Sudheer, which is that what are some of the major challenges? And I know we spoke about this a little bit when, especially let's say big businesses, whether within India or outside, put demands, compliances or protocols which are, let's say, industry standard for commercial manufacturing. And what is the struggle over there? I know we spoke about some of these like open sheet costing or quality checks, etc. Would you both like to share a few examples? And
may I just narrate a recent incident? So, the craft sector is veering towards people who come for inspections without understanding the product. It's just like me going to inspect a Mercedes-Benz. So recently we had to, ship out a very large consignment to a big brand. So the inspection team who had come insisted that, the entire consignment would be rejected because we had used invisible markers on the reverse of the pillow. My first question to him was, would you impose the same standards on yourself if you were a customer? He said no. Then I said, why? Then he said that no, when we go to factories, this is what is mandated of each product. So I said, look, this is not a factory. It's not made in a factory. It's made in a center, it's made in the home and whatsoever. But so we had to do the funniest test. The inspection team insisted that, we wash the invisible marker and put it in the freezer. Apparently, in apparel, the invisible marker, when it's clean, the marks still appear on the front of the garment. But in our case, thankfully, it didn't. So these are some of the very silly and unrelated protocols that we have to follow. Also, when they come to talk about compliances, I am on guard, Do you have a fire extinguisher in the homes? 450 plus homes. Am I going to go to each home and install a fire extinguisher? No. Do they have clean toilets? Am I going to go and check all the toilets? No. So really, there needs to be a better sensitization, and this is a fact. So, again, recently we had another incident where there was a mutiny of sorts within my small team. The inspection team, after every 1 hour, was filing a template with how many pieces, and every piece had at least like 20 markers. Come on. Finally, I had to stand up and say that I don't care if you want to buy it or not, it's all right. But don't subject us to this kind of, inhuman practices. So talking about compliances, I wish the standards will not be the same for craft versus a machine-made product.
So taking what Jesmina just said, I have a other story where when I started working with the artisans, I thought that, as a good citizen, the artisans should have clean toilets. So from goodness of my heart, we made 2 toilets for the artisans. 3 months down the line, when I went there, I saw again the artisans going out. I said, what happened to the toilets? No, madam, there was no storage room, so all our food is being stored there. So, like that, it was all created for something. They are so comfortable not using it that they have converted it into something else. The other example, my copper enamel artisans, they use crushed glass to make the enameling. Now they crush the glass with hand. So they sit and keep pounding it. And when I saw it for the first time, I realized it's very risky. So promptly I went, bought them gloves and bought them the glasses so that nothing goes in the eyes. Now they started wearing it the moment one guy would stand, Madam Ari pen lo. So they would wear it only when I am around. So, this was something I was trying to teach them because there was a list of compliance which came from a client. Now, then I went back and told these people that, listen, you have to also understand if you want them to wear those glasses, first make that whole workshop air conditioned. With when they are working in the heat, they are sweating all the time. You are sweating and you are putting those glasses on your eyes. You can hardly see what is happening. So having these compliances without thinking is a big, big problem. And you have to start at the basic. So when you explain them things, now the glass is powdered by, we have bought them the machine which does which grinds the masala. So that is happening now automatically. So that is where I think people like us can do the intervention. The designers can come and help. But if you look at it from the very, very legal point of view, the other example is our carpet makers, or any craft for that matter. The children of the artisans would come home from school, sit with the parents and work for a while. By the time they are 18 or 20, they would understand the know-how of the crafts very well. Today, because it falls under child labor, they are not allowed to sit there. And this has happened to many of the artisans where, by mistake, if their kids are found sitting where the work is happening, their orders have been rejected under the child labor law. So these are some things I feel are need to be looked into. I'm not, I'm not saying child labor is right, but if it's your family tradition, you learning it with your parents is, I think, the best way to take it forward.
Sudheer, similar question, but thoda different. So what are the challenges that you found, particularly when working with leather craftsmen and the industry? And secondly, I think it's been really interesting for me to even study the products that you make. And I think even within them, there's a slight subversion. There is a political commentary. So a little bit about that process and challenges kya hai and how have you dealt with them?
See, the school where I am working, which is this government leather working school, in this school, there is no teacher to teach them. And there is also less student. They are not interested. Even the parents are not interested because there is no awareness. And then parents are thinking like the student going to become a shoe repairer. They cannot think like they can become a shoe designer. So if you see the whole institute situation, which is not really like liveness there, it's completely dead. Even they want to shut this school, they don't care. But they don't know the potential from this craftsmanship from the India, that school or Indian craftsmanship can be leader in the like whole world, the Indian craftsmanship. But they are just stuck in one situation and they just want to repair the shoes. That's it. But when I explain the idea to them, like how the brands are working, how the other brands have atelier. I mean, see the West, they have like museums and proper ateliers there. But here, like no one care about the craft or the current situation, which is like really like shameful for like here in India. I realize it. This is a challenging also to me.
Absolutely. I think for us, one of the most exciting things about this exhibition is that the minute you see something in front of you, you care for it. And if you care for it, you will champion that cause. And if there is no availability of a museum structure or archives or mediums, how will one know enough to, care for something? Absolutely. I wanted to come to COVID. I know that COVID was a moment which I think showed us many vulnerabilities across sectors, but I think especially the crafts. But I think some maybe not so bad things also came out of it. What was the experience for all three of you? Do you want to start, Sudheer?
Yes, so COVID is in Dharavi, all of you know the situation, like really tiny room and a lot of artisans always work inside there. Because the sector is not organized. Even they don't know how to work with clean hand. Only the sector needs to be organized, then it will function well, I think. In the COVID situation, people are really scared there. The situation, because they don't have even toilets. They have to go, like, there is one common toilet. So everyone have to go there, so they cannot stop. So the biggest challenge is how to organize this sector. In COVID, I faced the situation, if the sector is organized, this is the example there, like we have to see, like open eyes, how to organize whole this sector, then it can be a better. They have like enough space, but it's not organized. This is how I see in the COVID.
Can you give an example of what, like an immediate step for organizing this that can happen, which you think is plausible, but it needs like maybe support of institutions and policy?
See, there is the issue of hygiene. Like if we can explain them, like they are not aware of it. This is the same thing with the craft. So this is how I learned how they scared in COVID, and they wanted to run to the village. They don't want to stay there, just because of, I think they're just earning like few of money and then they're stuck. But in the COVID, they just want to run their hometown. This is, I feel, but as much as our foundation, we can support them to reach their homes. Yeah, these are the experience in the COVID.
For us, the COVID times, we had a bull run. We had a surge in production. We had a surge in orders. Yeah. And, we defied all the doomsday craft crusaders wrong. Everybody only wanted to hear very, sorry stories from us. And I said, no. Suddenly we found that, the work that all the home workers were doing, the women particularly found newfound respect for themselves from within the family. Now, please remember that I said earlier that our craft is centered around the home. So suddenly there was a surge in production because everybody was pitching in. I mean, I don't know how many child labor was involved, but hey, there was a surge in production. And, I took out a special permit as essential commodity from the district administration. Everybody else was ferrying, food and other items. I was ferrying yarn, I was ferrying, colors, etc. to all these homes. And we even got special permission from the village chiefs to enter their villages, which were otherwise barricaded with all those bamboo spikes. No one could even dare step in there. But we could, because we were paying them. And you should have seen the incredulous looks on their faces when we were paying them. They were like, are you going to give us money? I said, of course, of course. So, and here, I want to bring in something like, we all have very negative things to say about the government. But in our case, just before the COVID struck, we were given a small assistance by the Ministry of MSME to build a common facility center. Now, around the common facility center, we had access to more than 10 or 15 clusters. In each cluster, we had more than 10 to 20 artisans. So all these people would rush in and rush out. Come, get the goods, the raw material, drop their merchandise, get the payment, and other times when they couldn't, and we were the ones going there. So, it was a big boon for us to have a facility like that, which was facilitated by the government. And we even increased our admin staff. I hired at least 8 new people to help us with the admin. Thank you.
So I would say I have something similar to what Jesmina said. We also tried many new things which we were very scared to try till then. So one is going online. So that was something I was very sure that crafts, people have to touch and feel, and then only people will buy. So there's no point in going online. And 2020, when the exhibition stopped and the shops were shut, we decided to go online, and now it's actually 40% of the revenues are coming from online sales. So that all started because of COVID. Every time we had to design something, I would run to the artisans physically, go to them, sit with them, discuss, make it. Because COVID stuck, we couldn't leave, we started using WhatsApp. Now it's become very easy. We send it on WhatsApp, we do calls, WhatsApp calls. The artisans, we have done several workshops, online workshops for other people, where Goan, Bale, Patachitra, all these painting, narrative crafts, we did 3-hour workshops online, and people just loved it because, and the artisans actually got a lot of, they got new avenues through this. We even managed to deliver a few projects. So we were, just before the lockdown, Starbucks had approached us to do one wall in Bhopal in Gond. While we were discussing that, lockdown started. So we actually created something where the pieces were cut in very small wooden pieces were cut, sent it to artisans with numbers at the back. We send them the matching prints from on WhatsApp. They actually managed to do it sitting in their homes. Now, the reason we had to cut it is because the biggest room in their house is maybe 10 by 10. So we had to make sure that the whole thing gets accommodated. But now today, if you go and see the wall which was created during lockdown, it is more than 25-30 feet long. They managed to do that. So a lot of new things happened. And yes, of course, the biggest thing I would say is creative dignity, which started because of this. And people who were working in silos have now come together, and that is still going strong.
I could hog all the questions, but I'll keep this to the last one before I turn to the audience. Just a quick one-line answer. I would love to know from each of you. Sudheer, for you, how do you define sustainability in your practice?
See, in the case of Chamars, it's historically, they are working with dead animals. So when the animal is dead, then they start processing with the skin, and then they make the objects. So the idea coming from there, the sustainability starts from there. This is how we adopt, and we started working with this discarded material like tubes and tire, and then we making the new sheets. So this is how we learn from the Chamar historically. So sustainability means, for me, like the system has to be sustainable, not just a simple material.
Which means that perhaps that the sustainability of the artisan to work has to also be kept in mind.
Yeah. Of course, it has to be like a whole system, like who are the maker and who and where it's going. So this is really important to know, like, who are the behind of this? Who is the maker? So this is really important. I think this is also as accounted in the sustainability part. But nowadays, people, they just found the one material and then they claim as like, oh, this is sustainable. It's not just a sustainability. The whole system has to be sustainable.
Absolutely. Jesmina, what does growth mean to you?
To increase my footprint in the craft sector. And I would like to request everyone to give a sympathetic or compassionate leaning towards the craft sector. And today, if we have to talk about the craft sector, we have to understand that we directly impact 11 of the 17 SDGs.
And Vishpala, what are the metrics by which you define success for Eki Beki?
So the primary metrics is how many artisans are coming back to the craft and are able to sustain themselves through craft. Now, sustaining themselves means whatever lifestyle with education they can have in a bigger city, can they have it with their own family, within their village. Just to give you an example of this, when Eki Beki started working with copper enameling, there was one family with around 5 to 6 artisans. Today, 2 families are there, around 15 artisans are working. And in the second family, the young man the artisan's son just got married. He has done his MBA. His wife is an MBA. Both were working in Mumbai. They have quit their jobs. They have gone back to village. And they are now helping run the business in a professional way. They are giving employment to many other artisans. And I would say this is a success matrix where he is able to, in spite of doing in spite of studying, he is able to give back to his society. He is very happy. He is staying with his family in the village. His lifestyle has not changed. He is not away from his loved ones, staying in a city, in a smaller place. So, you know, it's a win-win success for Eki Beki as well as the artisans.
Now I turn to the audience, if anyone has questions here.
I'm Manjula, and I'm very happy to be here because I work in the craft sector, and I have been an academician and work with the community to promote them, training. Training has been my, teach people how to make, teach people how to sell, teach people how to buy. So in the craft sector, what I feel, the customer has to be totally, awareness has to be created. So I have one question for all of you, that what is your wish list? What do you think should be done in the next, say, 10 years, 20 years, or in the days to come? What is it which you feel, I wish something had happened?
Okay, I will take this because that is one of the first goals of Eki Beki, to create craft awareness. Unless people are aware about the crafts, there is no way people will go asking for it. So we work on the craft awareness. We take that very, very seriously. The NGO works here. And what we do is we bring the artisans from villages to interact with the final customer. What happens is the artisan is sitting there in the village. He or she is designing something as per what they have seen so far. So that is also not fair, where it's awareness for both. You need awareness generation for the artisan as well as awareness generation for the final customer. So when you and me meet the artisan and see how they are working, what they are doing, how much work goes in it, the first thing you'll do is stop bargaining with them. So these are few of the small things. So awareness is very, very important. We conduct a lot of workshops in schools, colleges, especially schools, because that is where we feel the future generation is. And if they know about the arts and crafts from now, when they grow up, it won't be a shock like me when I was told about the crafts. I assumed it would be some 100, 200 crafts in the country, and never even thought that it would go beyond 3,000.
We are more focused on this awareness also, because this they are not aware, like they're just interested into making a mass production. They only know that, like if they make mass production and they will earn this much money, but they don't know the potential of editions of single edition or limited edition. We have to explain them, because they have like a mindset. If they produce like large, and they can sell like largely, which is like wrong idea. And I think I'm more interested in to teach them like how to we can speak about like make a small thing, like not large quantities, and then you can sell it better. This is how we work, and we are more focused on the archival part, which is missing here. Like nobody talk about the history of the leather artisans here, not any single archival material available. So we are more focused through the foundation and through my company. We are making like limited editions.
For me, I would say that we need to democratize craft to an extent which will give entry to many, many hands in the crafts business. Not everyone is cut out to do very, very skilled work, but since this sector impacts the livelihood of so many people, we need to look at crafts from the prism of making simple products as well, made by hand, but at the same time, it should be available for purchase for anybody and everybody. And secondly, I think I will not talk about awareness, but sensitization is more like it, as far as I'm concerned. Craft sensitization.
I'm Anjana, and I work in the craft space. I'm from Delhi, and I'm lucky I'm here today, hearing three wonderful panelists. So my question is that when I saw this exhibition, it is quite beholding. It's just wonderful to see hand craftsmanship. And it's quite clear that craft has to be driven by design, that we understand. My question is that how do we, to make it a mass movement, how do we hand back stewardship of the tradition to the artisan? How many Jesminas, Chamar Studios and Eki Beki will we have or find if we don't look at it from the reverse, from down there, where we go the other way around and teach design, empower the artisan to be able to understand the markets, to be able to understand the current trends, how to diversify, and really hand back the stewardship of the tradition to them. I think that's very important. And sensitization, of course, I agree with Jesmina. So that's what really my question would be. I don't know who would like to answer it.
I didn't hear half your question, so I'm very sorry.
So I'll just repeat it.
Yes.
That if we want a mass movement,
Yes.
we need to hand back stewardship of the tradition to the artisans.
Yes.
And in order to do that, we have to empower them to understand trends,
Yes.
colors,
Yes.
customer demand,
Yes.
what kind of products they need, how to diversify,
Yes.
etc.
So, like I said before, there needs to be a very close partnership between the makers, the artisans, the design fraternity, the private sector, the businesses. It's not collaboration. Collaboration to me is when I am getting some design inputs directly from, let's say, Karishma has given me, do this, then I will say that it's a collaboration. But I'm talking about partnership here. And I think, a lot can be achieved if design schools, which are the very foundations of driving the craft sector today, can make it mandatory for every design student to visit all the craft clusters. It must be made mandatory. Like just in the northeast of India, the government of the day has mandated that every central minister visits the northeast every month on a rotation. So Delhi comes to us now, and we are able to, speak our mind to them. So I think a movement like this, where institutions make it mandatory for the students to visit each of the clusters, work with the artisanal communities, and introduce them to what is trending in the market. I think that's the way forward.
I would say one more thing to it is, you know that you have to consider artisans as the stakeholders. Most of the time they are looked down upon, that they don't understand anything. We are the one who understand. We as designer understand, we as market people understand, we as consumers understand. And that is somebody who doesn't understand a thing. So first is that whole mind shift where, mindset shift where you make them part of the whole ecosystem. They are there with you as equals. So that is one shift. And second, as Jesmina pointed out, yes, it is needed that the design schools actually make it mandatory. To tell you, it is actually mandatory in most design schools. Unfortunately, I was made
But
to...
we need to pay them. So
Yeah. No, unfortunately, I was supposed to mentor it, and I realized the same, one institute had decided these 5 clusters. Last 8 years, all the students have been going to the same cluster, clicking the same images, coming back, doing a document on that. One basic question I asked them, what does this latitude and longitude, why are you doing it? No, that was written in the paper that we have to put it. They have no clue what they are doing it for. They have not been explained why they should be doing it. They go there thinking it's a picnic for them, 3 days picnic outing, where they go spend most of the time, click the same pictures, come back. So government comes up with these ideas. Unfortunately, the implementation is not happening properly. It just needs to be seen in a little more holistic way.
So for me, basically we have to more focus on the skill development, which we needed, which is really important here. As I can see in the school, there is no teacher to teach them. So I go part-time to work with them and experimenting with them. So this is what I want to more focus on the skill development, which is I have more interest in this area.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad the role the government came up. We were keen to understand what effort has been made and what success in trying to focus on institutional buyers and to use the government machinery. I'll give an example that we've tried in the art space, traditional arts, is the CSR regulation talks about promotion of handicrafts and traditional crafts. Unfortunately, nobody's really understood how to leverage that, because that category starts first with conservation of art and it ends with promotion of traditional art. So generally people misread the end as part of conservation. It's not part of conservation. It's a standalone category. So our representation to the government was that when an institutional buyer like a hotel or a hospital or a large IT park is set up, the architect or the purchase manager, without any wisdom or lack of a better understanding, goes and imports container load of Chinese art and dumps it there, which is a big disservice. If you can amend, just clarify that definition to say that purchase of traditional art by an institutional buyer, which could be qualified as a 300 key hotel or a 5,000 plus, category institutional park, then that purchase also should qualify as promotion of traditional art and be eligible for CSR. We think this one change can actually open the doorway, floodgates for purchase by all institutional buyers. Any thoughts on that, or how we can further take that idea forward?
So government actually has a rule where 1% or 2%, I forgot the percentage, 2%. But if it's any government building, okay, that much has to go in traditional arts and craft. Now, unfortunately, again, this is a chicken and egg situation, because people don't buy good craft because they are not available in the market. People don't know where to go looking for the craft, so hence they are not bought. And last minute, then what happens is the particular government officer who is in charge of that project will go to somebody he knows, ye art and craft mein kaam karte hain, and that person is told, within a week's time, we have a budget of 1 CR and you send us items. And I have seen this happen. Now, when somebody is asking you to create handcrafted things within a week for 1 CR, it's just not possible. So eventually very bad stuff is given, whatever is available wherever, from the government clusters which government has started without thinking of design development. So bad quality products reach such places which are put up for the day of inspection, then they are so bad that they are taken out and dumped in the rooms. So I would say it is again the same situation what is happening in the education sector, that we have some policies, some rules, nobody knows how to implement them.
Correct.
So
Probably the private sector will be a little more mindful. So if an institutional buyer is nudged through CSR provision, then the promoter of the hotel will be more mindful into buying the right.
That is unfortunately very few CSR people also understand this, art and craft they don't understand. For them, healthcare, they know, okay, we have to start a hospital where it will treat the poor in that area for free. We know what is the impact. Education, school you start, these many people come, they will study and you know the impact. In art and craft, it is not quantitative. You cannot say that, okay, we have helped 10 artisans with 20 paintings or, 10 looms created so much. So you don't find that number. So the CSR people find it very difficult. None of them are exposed to art and craft. So that is again, the exposure again comes here where they are not aware about the arts and crafts. So they cannot order. But this is a great initiative. Somebody needs to go after this for CSR as well as, and you would see that is the reason why many of the CSR projects are a big fail. Even after spending crores of rupees, they don't reach anywhere.
So as Aura, we made that letter, we'll take the discussion offline and pursue that.
Thank you.
I'm curious that when I think back historically, some of the finest works of craft have all sort of, craft has always thrived with patronage, right? Whether you look at the Konark temple or you look at, other forms of textile crafts and others. And I'm just curious to there's been a lot of conversation around commerce on the panel, but I'm just wondering if you think that there is merit in promoting and actually actively seeking patronage in different ways in the crafts. And I think this exhibition is an interesting example of also looking at other intersections between craft and fashion or craft and design, where that kind of patronage is a possibility. So just curious to get your thoughts on that.
I can take that question. A couple of years ago, I was approached by a craft catalyst, she's sitting right there, Aradhana, to apply for this prize, which was instituted by the Jindal Steel Works. So it was a prize for contemporary craftsmanship. I said, no, I'm not even bothered about all these prizes. And, you had to fill in that many questions and you had to, comply with that many questions and all that. So I wasn't interested. Well, to cut the story short, I did put in all my papers or whatever and the samples, and then I got chosen as the winner for the contemporary prize. And having said that, I was very skeptical, but it gave me a lot of recognition, at least in the domestic market, within the design fraternity. And today, we are working with a lot of designers, architects, interior designers for for excellent work. So I think patronage and recognition in that sense is needed, is very much needed.
I remember when I called Jesmina, she was very, very hesitant and reluctant almost to spend these hours writing the form and applying for the prize. And what I did realize with that was that it wasn't just a learning for you, but a big learning for me. Because I feel like patronage is really important in recognizing the craft. I think the trickle-down approach that can happen with patronage is, I mean, we're seeing it today, and we're all here, and we've seen what's happened in the last couple of weeks here. And I think that while we are talking about patronage, I really agreed with you when you spoke about having various designs for different levels of craft, so that it's also a mass product as well as luxury. But I think patronage really helps with the trickle-down approach and creating the awareness. So I'm glad you applied, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, there's one last question, and then I'll close.
So I actually wanted to ask about authorship, and I know that this was briefly touched upon in the conversation, but I'm curious to know how it works, especially when you have collaborations or partnerships. And given that craft is usually a collective art-making practice, there's never any one artist or one author, let's say, of the work. So how does one correctly attribute authorship, especially in public spaces or even in design spaces? How does one make sure that the people who have actually made it get recognized appropriately? And anyone can answer.
Have you read the movie credits in the end? They credit each and every person, be that some 20 people under the makeup, assistant makeup, whatever. That is one practice craft people have to start, acknowledging it. We actually, if you see, the artisans are not acknowledged beyond the master artisan. Even the designers, for that matter, the design studios would always put the name of the chief designer or whoever studio is that person doesn't create all the designs. So one is we have to step back and first start acknowledging everyone, whoever is included in that. People have started, when it's a big project where there are 20, 30, 40 people, it becomes a little difficult, but as long as there are 10 people, you can have that information with each and every product. It's not that difficult. You just have to make that extra effort. We do that with each and every product of ours. If it's a group, we write the group's name, where it's very difficult because multiple people are doing multiple things at a time. But typically, our stationery, when we do, it is done by one narrative craft artisan and one of the designers from our team works. And both their names are included in that. So recognizing people who are behind them, it is needed.
But here's the thing. Many big brands, they do only white labeling. So, and there we are at the other end of the spectrum. We need work. So we agree to it. So I don't know how to say this, but to a large extent, I'm okay because we do get continuity of work, and which is what we seek at the end of the day. I don't expect every brand who's working with every craft person to label his or her name at the end of the product. I don't believe in that.
Thank you so much for being here. This is the second of many conversations that the team has planned. I think the next one is about e-commerce platforms, something we decided not to touch upon too much over here. But most importantly at the moment, we're in our last week of this exhibition. The last day is on April 22nd. I think today our count went over 3,000, which is remarkable and is just testament to how fantastic the works are. So please do come in, bring your friends, family, tell everyone else, and catch the show. Thank you so much.